Hey everyone, and welcome back. I know you did not get a chance to see these two familiar faces early this morning, but for good reason, because there was not a keynote. Rob and I again returning from the keynote-worthy session earlier yesterday, back again to do our daily recap here in English. Rob, how's your day been? I know you've been following along with some of the sessions here at reInvent.
Yeah, absolutely. What an action-packed day, and I think I need a recap for myself. So this is as much for me as it is for you viewers. But everybody tuning into AWS on Earth, thank you for watching. As Nick said, this is our daily recap where we're gonna highlight some of our favorite sessions and announcements. You know, we're kind of playing favorites here. The reality is that there's so much great stuff going on, so much amazing content on the platform that you can explore at your own pace. We've got a great search feature in the platform where you can discover the sessions by track, by time, by language. And so we really want you to go and explore that content, find what makes the most sense to you, and engage with it.
Wonderful. Yeah. So before we dive into your picks of the day for the sessions here at reInvent, I figure we could reiterate sort of what folks are probably tuning into. I know they can be stumbling upon this channel at all points of the day. Again, here we are the AWS on-air channel. You can find us with that little hamburger menu in the side in case you arrived here with a direct link. We are the official live streaming track here at AWS reInvent 2020. We've got a multitude of different shows that we're running. These daily recaps are one of them, and we'll be running different localized versions in international time zones and 10 different languages throughout the middle of the night. But if you're tuning in here on the tail end of the day in the Americas, you'll be able to catch other shows like Keynote Worthy, where we recap the 5 different keynotes, AWS What's Next, where we'll be covering deep dives and demos of recently launched and announced services with the service teams. We just wrapped up some exciting sessions today for Voice of the Customer. This is where we perform some interviews of prominent members of various organizations that are using AWS in production to deploy highly innovative and cutting edge applications built on top of some of the newest features that we're talking about here across reInvent. And we actually have another show coming up right after this recap called the Certification Quiz Show. They had an episode yesterday, and they have one today as well, focused on machine learning. So if that is at all interesting to you, you'll definitely want to tune in. We can revisit this schedule and get into what's up tomorrow. But first, Rob, I want to pass it back to you. What were your go-to sessions from today?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Well, as I said, I feel guilty picking any favorites out of these excellent sessions. This was really hard, and but I was tuned in all day, and I found some really interesting announcements that I want to share with you. Now, I haven't really arranged them in any particular order, so bear with me. This is just kind of as I was taking some notes as I was watching this. But I'll start with what's new with Amazon S3. Now, this session, if you want to find this, the session ID is STG201. That's STG201. And this is a deep dive into S3 with a lot of an emphasis on some of the new features that we're launching. So one of these new features, for example, is the consistency of the API. And S3 recently launched the consistency with some of its storage APIs, all of its storage APIs. S3 is a storage API. And the really cool thing is that you get all of these benefits for free, no additional cost. Now you can read your own writes, guaranteed. And that was already the case for the vast majority of the time. But now you don't have to build in retry logic to make sure that's the case. But there's a lot of other stuff going on in S3. And if you use S3, you want to know what you can accomplish with S3, absolutely check it out. Again, STG201. Next up, we have Amazon Document DB with MongoDB compatibility. And this is another deep dive. The session ID for this is DAT307. That's DAT307. And the reason why I picked this is because we talk about DynamoDB a lot as our default NoSQL store. And the fact is that we have multiple NoSQL stores available on AWS, and DocumentDB is one of them. And we know that there are a lot of customers out there with workloads that are suitable for MongoDB or prefer to use MongoDB. And DocumentDB has API level compatibility with MongoDB, most recently with MongoDB 4.0. And this includes a lot of transactional guarantees, ACID style transactions. So this is really kind of a database that brings the best of both worlds with respect to SQL and NoSQL. Very popular product, and definitely another one of these examples where we have databases that are purpose-built for the job. Again, DAT 307 for a deep dive on DocumentDB. Speaking of databases, if you want a general overview of what's going on, we have Sean Bice, VP of Databases, who's talking about building for the future of AWS databases. This session is DAT 292-L. I think you can find it just by typing in, again, DAT 292. And this is really kind of an overview. Again, Sean, nobody knows this better than him, but really kind of taking you through the philosophy of why we build these databases, why are there this set of databases, not more, not less, with lots of hands-on demos. Switching tracks a little bit, I've picked out 2 talks in the security category. And the first of these is AWS Identity, 10 identity health checks to improve security in the cloud. The session ID for this is SEC312. Now, think of this session. This is actually really interesting. This is almost like a checkup for your. Oops. My Alexa is going off. Sorry about that.
Can you imagine, Rob, one day you just ask your, I won't say it out loud because it'll call it again, but you ask your device to just check in on the health of your AWS infrastructure, and it can do it for you? That would really be a dream, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think you can build that skill if you're an Alexa developer.
Alexa devs, hit me up.
Yeah,
we'll make it happen.
Please build it. Yeah, so 10 identity health checks. This is a kind of a checkup for your identity posture in AWS. Now, as you all know, security in AWS starts with our meta service, IAM, Identity and Access Management. And this is how you identify who can do what. And these are prescriptive and declarative rules for how your infrastructure is observing the principle of least privilege. And this is a talk that kind of dives deep into that and how you can enforce that across the organization. IAM is one of these services that has continuous improvements, and it's really important to stay on top of it because it's critical to operating securely in AWS.
I actually have a shout out here. Do you happen to know who's teaching that IAM session by any chance?
I don't know off the top of my head who's teaching that IAM session.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, to your point, IAM underpins so many of the services here at AWS. I mean, it quite literally identity and access management, and doing it correctly takes understanding of how the service works. It's tempting to just hit the little star next to access privileges, but we all know that is not the right decision to be made. I'm going to give a shout out to Becky Weiss, I believe one of the senior principal engineers over at IAM. I believe she's still there. But some of her past reInvent talks have been the most enlightening, even for me at AWS, to deeply understand not just the bare minimum about IAM, but how to deeply understand the philosophy behind it, why it's designed in the way that it is. And I think that there are some difficult parts to grok in the beginning, but when you use it more extensively, you start to understand that it should cover every single one of your cases, and that's not something you can say for other similar tools that are in the same space. So again, shout out to Becky for some awesome IAM content. Check out her past talks on the YouTube channel, I believe, if you search for them. They helped a lot. There are some really great visualizations for how IAM works.
Yeah, I totally agree. Becky is awesome, extremely knowledgeable, and just a really good, fun speaker. And I think you should definitely check out some of her content on YouTube and elsewhere. Okay, so let me speed this up so that we have time to get through the rest of the stuff. Introducing AWS Network Firewall. This is one of our new launches. It's a new security service that enables us to implement granular traffic inspection across a variety of different network configurations. The session ID for this is SEC311, introducing AWS Network Firewall. Again, SEC311. If you type in this code in the search box, you're going to be able to find the session and add it to your calendar. All right, we've got something different next up here is best practices for running Microsoft Active Directory on AWS. One thing that a lot of people overlook is the fact that AWS runs more Windows and Microsoft workloads than any other cloud provider. And part of that, of course, has to have a good solution for Active Directory, Microsoft's distributed operating system, right? Active Directory is a foundational piece to so many different workloads and types of infrastructure. And there's so many different ways to run so many different versions of Active Directory. Active Directory is kind of this utility knife, right? And so this is a great talk if you're in that camp, if you've got a Microsoft shop or a .NET shop, and you can't imagine life without Active Directory. It doesn't have to necessarily generate friction with AWS. In fact, it can actually be configured to run and play very nicely. And so this is a great session. The ID here is WIN301. That's WIN301, best practices for running Microsoft Active Directory on AWS.
Rob, I think it was just one more follow-up on that one. I think it was last year, I remember correctly, at reInvent, where there was an SSO-related launch for Microsoft Active Directory. Or was that some point in the last year? It's we've come full circle. It's been a whole year since reInvent last year. It's hard to imagine, but the launches keep coming.
Active Directory, by the way, I think what we're talking about is that there's a lot of features that launch across the board that kind of enable Active Directory to provide single sign-on, so that it integrates with IAM policies defined in your AWS organization, and that way you get really good control over your IAM policies. Again, going back to that kind of security being job zero for everyone. We also have securing Amazon EKS applications, best practices. The session ID here is CON205. And I feel like there's been a lot of talk about EKS, specifically at this reInvent with EKS Anywhere. I think we did a What's Next segment on that earlier today, right? But yeah, I mean, EKS, one of our rapidly growing and critical pieces of container services. But obviously that comes with a set of best practices that we can talk about here. And again, the session ID is CON205.
Yeah, I mean, with EKS Anywhere in particular, again, having those bindings that customers may have come to enjoy with the cloud managed offering, there may be some different options and affordances for being able to secure those workloads, or the self-managed version of EKS in EKS Anywhere. So if this was something that you saw in the opening keynote from Andy that you found exciting, I would certainly jump straight into that one, because the most secure EKS deployment is not having an EKS deployment at all. But if you are going to have an EKS deployment, I would certainly watch that to be able to be equipped to handle it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have accelerate app deployment, modern app development with AWS Amplify open source framework. And this is delivered none other than our friend and colleague, Nader Dabit from the Amplify team. The session ID here is OPN204. And Nader takes you through the end-to-end, right? From scratch to a fully functional Amplify app. And he shows you exactly how easy and powerful and flexible Amplify is as a framework for getting past all the cruft and focusing on building your application.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily related to that, I don't think, but the Amplify Admin Ui that was launched is something that I am excited to get my hands on and see. I've seen some demos on Twitter, some quick videos about getting used to it. I think someone described it as almost like the Nginx, like the Django admin dashboard, but it can plug in directly to other data sources and cloud devices. And it's available again without even having an AWS account. Again, Amplify has managed hosted offerings in static site hosting through AWS, but a lot of people often forget that Amplify sort of started as sort of just being this force of multiplying developer toolchain and toolkit to be able to more easily build the scaffolding for applications. And so regardless of what your underlying data store might be, it seems like the Amplify team is really mission driven on being able to deliver that for customers. I think I saw something like Amplify Admin UI supports Firebase too, which is a very interesting development as well, meeting customers truly where they are. So excited to see that. And Nader is any session by Nader is always a great one. So definitely want to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Amplify is something to keep your eye on. It's one of the fastest growing open source projects on GitHub. And I think it's worth checking out exactly why. We also have the Perennial Amazon Culture of Innovation session. This talk is, the session code is INO201. And this is a talk that we deliver every year. Every year it's extremely popular because we talk about how Amazon works. How does Amazon deliver so much value across so many different types of businesses? And by the way, this is Amazon. This is not just AWS. AWS is a part of Amazon and we have a shared culture. And there are unique things about AWS. But in general, the leadership principles, the 14 leadership principles, operate at the Amazon level, and they span the entire company, including AWS. And so we talk about some of those leadership principles, but we specifically focus on these concepts of working backwards and two pizza teams. Why are smaller teams more successful? How does this interact with the frugality leadership principle, right? There's a lot of kind of misinterpretation on first read when somebody reads that. They're like, oh, frugality, Amazon, that means Amazon's cheap. It doesn't want to buy things. It doesn't want to spend money. That's actually not at all what the leadership principle is about. And you'll kind of see that in this talk when they dive deep into the concept of the two pizza teams.
Yeah, going back to Andy's keynote, a culture of innovation that is not forced upon you or that is not retroactive will always be far more successful. And so, again, this talk is not one where we post a video one time and that should be it. It's something that will never stop being important for companies to learn. Making the decision at the executive level to be able to invest in innovation is the first step. And this talk really helps shed some light on tangible steps in how we achieve that here at Amazon, but hopefully gives enough insight for folks to be able to start strategizing ways to implement that at their own organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point, is that part of the reason why people are so curious about this talk is that these are principles that work almost everywhere, and they can lead to a lot of successful outcomes. All right, and then in Andy's keynote yesterday, you probably heard about AWS Proton. And if you're like me, you were extremely curious about what this means, because Proton is, as far as I'm concerned, this was kind of a missing piece, right? When we talk about really complicated infrastructure, when we talk about really large sprawling infrastructure graphs, when you have microservice architectures that have hundreds, if not thousands, of microservices, it's very hard to wrap your head around dependencies and how deployment works when there are chains of dependencies. And Proton is a new service that enables infrastructure operators to create and manage that kind of deployment across containers and serverless offerings, right? So what does that look like? How does it work? How can you get started? It's all in this session, EMB 008. That's EMB 008 for a first look at AWS Proton, automating infrastructure provisioning and code deployments.
Yeah, super interesting. Again, one that I'm excited to get my hands on. To your point about it, Proton feeling like a missing piece. We've seen sort of the bottom-up proliferation of observability tools and additional ways to be able to track and monitor at the service-by-service level. Especially when we're talking microservices, we're talking about ways to measure traffic to DynamoDB. We're talking Lambda. We're talking API Gateway. And then sort of on the top-down approach, we have deploying an entire infrastructure as code stack like CloudFormation and the CDK. And if we want to be able to deploy an entire stack with baked-in metrics, well, we can do that through CloudFormation. But again, it feels like there should be a way to identify that these pieces are a part of an individual microservice, and to be able to both deploy, generate, or have observability into, and ultimately treat them sort of like some type of atomic unit in the way that Proton seems to deliver. So I know other developers see it as that too. I'm excited to get my hands on it and see what it looks like to be able to manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to really help accelerate and streamline workloads for folks who are expanding their microservice architectures. And then, okay, finally, last one. Now, I have to admit that I cheated a little bit. This is not a session that has happened yet. It is happening in an hour. This is the Go Global with AWS Multi-Region Network Services. So I have not heard this talk yet, but trust me, I'm going to be paying close attention, because this session talks about some of the more sophisticated deployments that you can build with the AWS Global Network. We're talking about combining the AWS Global Accelerator with Direct Connect, with DNS, with Amazon CloudFront, to create your own internet backbone, essentially, right? When you hear about companies and customers like Bloomberg talking about how they run on their private version of the internet, a lot of that actually runs on the AWS Global Network. The Global Network, this is something that I never get tired of talking about, but the Global Network, this is the most extensive publicly available network infrastructure out there of any cloud provider. We span dozens of countries. We have hundreds of points of presence and edge locations. And this network we've laid down dedicated fiber to connect these different regions. And the idea with concepts like CloudFront or Global Accelerator is that your network takes as few hops as possible and goes through as few internet exchange points as possible to get onto the global network. Because once it's on the global network, now you can take advantage of a number of benefits. For example, we have we have estimated and we've measured and we've built enough provision capacity for that network traffic to go through with as little loss as possible. So what that means for your application is that it has less packet loss, less delay, lower latency, better user experience, better performance. And this is one of the ways we've heard yesterday during Andy's keynote again, where Riot Games takes advantage of the global network to reduce lag in their games. When they talk about their private infrastructure, they are also leveraging the AWS global network and a global accelerator. So the global network is really something that kind of is ever present, right? And one of the things that's made the global network so powerful is direct connect, the ability to stitch together your on-prem network with your resources in your AWS regions. And with all the kind of, it used to be kind of black and white, right? It's either on-prem or it's in the AWS region. But really now, if you think about it, with Outpost and then some of the smaller Outpost offerings and local zones and wavelength, that kind of edge computing story is much more sophisticated. Now it's a spectrum of solutions instead of just kind of two endpoints at the bookends. So, if you have workloads that benefit from these kinds of more sophisticated network topologies, you really want to attend this talk. The session ID is NET202.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. I spoke to a number of customers today in these Voice of the Customer sessions and the industry recap session for energy. And we're finding that, the early choice that customers had to make was either remain on-prem and inherit all of the ongoing, OpEx cost, the extreme OpEx, but also CapEx costs of self-managed infrastructure, or you can get on-demand provisioning, cost elasticity, pay-as-you-go modeling, and all of the services and APIs that are nice and shiny. And so it was kind of like choosing between two different things. Whereas now, with like you said, Outpost, and the ability to push some of the compute into customers' data centers or in local zones closer to their region, the chasm in which customers are having to decide across is much smaller now. They're able to sort of get the best of both worlds in these APIs and services and managed offerings that they've come to enjoy. And a lot of the, maybe challenges that they weren't able to surpass in earlier days are starting to dwindle as the days go on. So, this isn't about being all on cloud or not. Sometimes there are very tangible and for compliance reasons or performance reasons why data should have to live in certain locations, and moving compute and other, or maybe opening up networking towards the where the data already lives on-prem starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Well.
Definitely. Well, and again, Nick, just one final note here. I just want to remind you that while these are pretty interesting topics for me personally, I invite you to think of them as an entry point into exploring the vast catalog of content that we have. Don't just take a look at these. Use them to kind of pique your curiosity, right? When you look up these sessions, you'll be able to find the tracks that they're part of. Click on that track and see what else jumps out at you and explore. I mean, the platform is going to be available for you. This is all on-demand content after the first release. So definitely explore the content it's meant to be explored and engaged with. So hopefully this gives you it's a good icebreaker to get you into some of these content tracks.
Yeah, I will play the foil to what you just said with everything being on demand, and that is that we are here on AWS On Air, the live streaming segment of AWS reInvent 2020. And while many of these may be available after the fact on demand, like the What's Next sessions, the industry and customer interviews, and the certification quiz show, which is coming up after this, this is happening in the here and now. These daily recaps are probably most relevant on the days in which they occur. So, if this is a convenient time for you, we'll be here at this time each of the 3 active days during reInvent. But I figured we could jump very quickly to review the schedule for what we can expect tomorrow before everyone signs off for the day. So if we can see this. Yep, here we go. So we are looking at Wednesday. This is today. We finished off 2 What's Next sessions on EKS Anywhere and Amplify Admin Ui. We got to talk to some very exciting use cases from customers from the Financial Times, Publicis Media, Goldman Sachs. We got a recap of energy and how that comes into play here at AWS for all of our various customers there. We got to see a little bit more with Amazon Connect tasks. We saw an episode of AWS Agriculture Live. I believe they were talking to McDonald's about an open source broiler and management of some of the poultry facilities. That was kind of interesting. I just got off the line speaking to GE Digital and how they've done the manufacturing data cloud. And we have this recap now with CQ ML Power Hour coming up next. If you're tuning in here and English may not be your jam, we have 10 different localized recaps that will be happening throughout the night. These will be happening at the same time each day for every active day in reInvent as well. So we see into tomorrow, Italian, German, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And then we will be back again to recap a keynote early on tomorrow. Rob, do you know what keynote that is by any chance?
I've lost track. It's been a long day, but it's going to be good, whatever it is.
Okay, yeah, we will look that up. There are 5 of them this year, so I believe more than any other year. So we'll have to check in on that. But as you can see on here, more What's Next sessions. Again, these are going to be deep dives with the service teams where we'll be showing off the actual services and features that have recently launched in these keynotes and throughout reInvent with the teams that built them. We have, for the first time this week in the lineup, Community Voices. We'll be talking with Aws Heroes, some of the folks that may be familiar faces to each of you around the world, who are some of the foremost experts in leading communities, authoring blog posts, some of the foremost experts outside of AWS on these services. We'll have industry live sessions for a handful, healthcare, travel, and hospitality. Howdy Partner is back with Cohesity tomorrow, IoT All the Things, and so on and so forth. Again, a larger weekly recap next week for an entire hour. We'll try to cover everything that happened in the week, but I know tomorrow is a packed schedule, so we will try our best and not try to bump up against that industry live session. But I can't believe it. We're through day 2 here on the English section of AWS On Air. I keep saying that, but we have ML Power Hour up next, and I know I hear in my ear that I am holding them up. So I will not keep them waiting any longer, and I won't keep anyone who's waiting at home any longer. So Rob, any closing words for day 2 of week 1 here at AWS On Air?
I think the only closing thoughts I have are, this has been a great day, but expect more. Pace yourself. There's a lot of good stuff coming, and we've got 3 weeks of content. This is this is a unique way to deliver content, and we hope you're really enjoying yourself.
Exactly. Buckle up, everyone. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and we will see you back here tomorrow. If you are here on the broadcast, stick around. A minute after we go off the air on this show, we will be back with Certification Quiz Show, ML Power Hour edition. Stay tuned, and we will see you all tomorrow.